So in trigonometry, there's a rule for right triangles. And this rule says basically, if you have a triangle with a right angle, the three sides add up in a certain way. And that is the two smaller sides, if you square them, they add up to the bigger side. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And this is known as the Pythagorean Theorem. And an important note is that C is always, let me pick the right color for C. C is always the longest side of the triangle, or otherwise known as the hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is always the longest, or another way to think of it is it's the one that's opposite to the right angle. So let's try an example working out this sort of theorem here. So let's say the first side is 3. Let's say the second side has a length of 4. The question I ask is, what is the third side? And all we do to figure it out is we literally just plug in our numbers. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, a is 3, so 3 squared, let me write that a little better. 3 squared plus b squared, well, b is 4, so 4 squared. Well, that's equal to c squared. Okay, let me get my colors. Okay, well, 3 squared is just 9. Plus 4 squared is 16 equals, let me keep my colors consistent since I've already started, equals c squared. Well, 9 plus 16 is just 25, so c squared equals 25. We don't want to know what c squared is. We want to know what c is. So to find out what c is, we take the square root of both sides, and that cancels out our squared, and we get c equals the square root of 25 is just 5. And so this last side is 5. So with that, let's try another example. Let's make this one a little bit different. Let's say we have another triangle, but let's say this time we know c. Oops, let's keep that gray. Let's say this time we know c. We know c is 10. And let's say we know b is 8. What would that make a? A equals question mark. Okay. So we get a squared plus, well, let's keep that coloring consistent, plus b squared, which is 8. Well, 8 squared, well, let's just go ahead and write in 8 squared, equals 10 squared. And I can see I can rewrite this formula a couple ways. 10 squared becomes 100. And I want to get a by itself, so I'm going to subtract 8 squared on both sides. And 8 squared is just 64. So 100 minus 64 equals a squared. And let's try to keep our coloring consistent still, just to soothe my OCD. Well, 100 minus 64 is just 36. So a squared equals 36. We take the square root of both sides to cancel out the squared. We take the square root of 36, we get a equals, the square root of 36 is just 6. So this last side is 6. So let's try one more example. Let's say this time, let's make the triangle a different color this time. Let's say this time we got an isosceles triangle. What's an isosceles triangle? An isosceles triangle is where 2 of the sides are the same length, but the third one is not. So these 2 are the same length, and this bottom one is not. And let's say all we know about this random triangle is that the bottom length down here is 10. So from end to end is 10. And let's say we also know the height. Let's say the height is 12. So from bottom to top is 12. And my question to you is, well, what is the third side? And this side, or not the third side, the other 2 sides, because these 2 are equal. These 2 are the exact same. And you might say, well, Mr. Anderson, we don't know because we don't have a right triangle. You said this only works with a right triangle. And so the answer is, well, you're right, but we can turn this into a right triangle by dividing this in half. If I cut this in half, right down the middle, this does 2 things. First off, it creates a right triangle. And the second thing is I cut the bottom side in half, so now we know this length. Well, this length becomes 5 from here to the center. So we know And we also know that this is still 12. This side over here is still 12. So we got a 12, 5 right triangle. We know a squared. We know b squared. We just need to find c squared. Let me go ahead and make this here. This is blue for b squared. So what we got? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we got 12 squared plus b squared is 5 squared equals c squared equals, I used pink for c, so c squared, keep it consistent. Okay, so, well, 12 squared is just 144, and you can check my math if you want to. 5 squared is obviously just 25. Well, that equals c squared. C squared. Oh, well, let's keep our colors consistent since we've done it so far. Well, I'm bad at math, so I'm going to use my calculator to figure this out. And by the way, you could have done that to figure out what 12 squared was if you didn't know it. You could have just typed it in and got 144, but I already knew that, so I didn't have to. But I don't know what 144 plus 25 is, so I'm going to use my calculator to figure it out. So I add them up, and I get 169. So c squared equals 169. Well, we need to take the square root of that to find out what c is. I want to find out what those last two sides are. The square root of 169 is 13. So these last two sides, c equals 13. Both of these are 13 since they are equal.